Hi guys, Jason here. Welcome to the channel. Today we're looking at this SLO100. It's one of the new ones, right? The re-released legendary SLO. This amp belongs to Wayne, who is a local player here in Melbourne, and Wayne has a really impressive collection of amps. I'm not normally minded to mod an SLO, right? They are legendary animals in their own right. But Wayne was kind of curious, and he and I chatted about this, and I've completed a mod switch on the rear of the amp. It's completely non-invasive. There's no drilling. It's entirely, completely reversible. And we just thought we'd do it, you know, and see if we could have some fun with this thing. Of course, it can be returned to stock. It's a two-way switch. When the switch is up, the amp is 100% stock, and when it's down, it's got the mod. What I want to talk about in today's video is an approach to modding amps and an approach to modding an amp like this. I want to have a look at the legendary cold clipper gain stage that is the hallmark of the SLO tone, and just talk a little bit about how that gain stage is working with respect to being cold biased, and how you might approach modding this thing to get a different kind of gain out of it. Right, so how do we go about modding an SLO? So I just want to talk about an approach, right? So there's a number of things you could do to mod any amp. Now, with the SLO, the thing that I focused on was this good old cold clipper here, right? So forgive my really rough hand-drawn schematic, and I haven't put all the values in here. Look, you know, if you really want to find out what an SLO looks like from a, you know, schematic perspective, you will find it on the internet. But safe to say that these gain stages here, these early ones, right, they are kind of set up as standard gain stages, or they're biased in a standard way. So this might be a 220 or a 100k plate resistor with a, you know, 1.8k cathode resistor. And if you want to go and have a look at, you know, how to bias, or the the impact that biasing a triode makes on a gain stage, go and have a look at my cathode resistor video, right? Because we talk about that, and we talk about the cold clipper. In that video, I talk about the Marshall 10K cathode cold clipper, right? And the SLO, good old Mike, went to 39, which is ice cold, I would say. Now, so to approach this from a mod perspective, I kind of focused in on this cold clipper gain stage here. It's a 100K plate, so that's kind of standard, right? And I thought about, well, you know, to change the gain characteristic of this amp, this would be the easiest thing to do, to focus on, to really kind of change its, you know, have an option in the amp that really changed the nature of the gain. So what do you do to increase the gain stage of a triode, right? The simplest way, you put a cathode bypass cap in here. You know, there's lots of information around on the internet. I've done a bunch of videos. In that cathode resistor video, I talk about what a bypass cap does, right, with respect to gain, and also how to choose the value of this capacitor to change the frequency spectrum that's getting boosted in this gain stage. Now, you can just whack a bypass cap in here, and I tried it for kicks. Doesn't work. Right, and the reason it doesn't work is because this gain stage is biased. It's so coldly biased that it's half of the waveform is right at cutoff point, right? And again, go and have a look at the cathode resistor video, and I talk about the bias point for the gain stage. Now, if it's coldly biased, it means that half of the waveform is very close to being clipped. That's why it's called a cold clipper. If you put a bypass cap straight on there, what's going to happen is that pretty much half of your waveform, your guitar signal, is just going to be smashed up against the cutoff point of the valve, and it's going to sound pretty terrible. I tried it, it did. Right? I wasn't surprised, but I wanted to try it for kicks. It just sounds like, I don't know, garbage, right? Because you're only kind of getting half of your waveform coming through. The rest of it's just been so clipped. It's no good. So what do you do about that? Well, what you want to do is you want to get this triode back into an operating point that's kind of more in the middle of the range, right? So what I did was to parallel in my mod, when the switch is off, it's just a 39K, and when the switch goes on, I parallel in this bypass capacitor and a resistor, and a resistor in parallel with a 39K, that combined in parallel gets it back into a traditional kind of, you know, 2K or so cathode resistance, and thereby bringing the operating point for the gain stage back into the middle, into the sweet spot, and giving it room on both sides of your waveform from your guitar, so that it's not clipping too hard on one side. Now, the other thing I needed to do is, because there's so much gain coming from this gain stage now, that the level of the signal hitting the grid of the gain stage, combined with how much gain this triode was now producing, meant that the amp just sounded like mush. Terrible, like completely unworkable. And that was, you know, so the level of the signal that was coming through here into the cathode follower and the tone stack was just ridiculous. So when I switch into the modded mode, I'm also paralleling in another resistor here, right, along with this 1 meg voltage divider. So this is the voltage divider here, okay, in the stock SLO. It's a 470K coming out of this gain stage here with a 1 meg to ground, and that's voltage divider, meaning it's dividing the voltage. It's reducing. You can think of the voltage divider like a pot, all right, so you're turning it down, but it's just fixed. So if I put another resistor in here in parallel with the 1 meg to reduce the overall resistance to ground here, therefore getting a lower level of signal coming into the grid here. And I just kind of did that by ear. I actually put a pot, I wired a pot in there and moved the pot around until I found the value that sounded good to me, and then I put a normal fixed resistor in there that was closest to where the pot was set. So it's just an approach, guys. You know, the reasons I put this video together really was just to kind of show you how you can kind of go about modding an amp like this, and you know, just kind of focusing in on one particular gain stage in the amp and how a couple of very subtle changes or very small changes can actually make quite a dramatic difference to the overall tonal characteristics of the amp.